Hi, guys, it's Brooke here. I have a super quick favor to ask. When you have a moment, please take just a second to give this podcast a 5-star review. This will help me to continue the podcast and continue to bring these resources to the community. Thank you so much for that 5-star review.
It breaks my heart when I see communities within our community of parents that have disabled children, not just autism, honestly, just on all areas, where they're sitting there so busy utilizing the little energy they have left, comparing their struggles with others. And I know we're human, we're bound to have a few comparisons here and there, out
Yeah.
of survival. But I feel if we use that same energy
Mhm.
to embrace each other and embrace our children's strengths and their uniqueness, I feel like we would go a lot further as a community. And
Mhm.
I mean, we're already fighting for services for our children with the outside world. We're already fighting the districts at times, or trying
Mhm.
to find more therapies that our kids could use, or find a new way where our kids are going to taste new foods. So we have so many
Yeah.
already outside battles. Why bring it in instead and make it even a more isolating journey as a community? I think it's all
Mhm.
about supporting each other and understanding it's not about judgment or comparison. It's about embracing and celebrating other people's successes just like if it was ours.
Hey there, it's Brooke, and welcome to Finding Hope on the Spectrum, where I have heart to heart conversations with parents, professionals, and autistic individuals sharing personal insight and life experiences. Together, we dive deep into supports, programs, and stories that offer inspiration, insight, and most importantly, hope for the neurodiverse community. Before we begin with today's topic, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you know someone who this would be helpful for, please pass it along. Remember to always stay curious, be kind, and have an open heart. Okay, well, I am so excited to have this conversation today, and we have a really amazing guest on today, Karla Shein, and I'm going to introduce Karla, and we're going to talk about just so many important topics related to her personal journey with having two autistic children and her own diagnosis and having a sibling, and she is just a wealth of information, and I'm just so grateful that she's on today to share her own experience and all the things she's doing for the autism community. So I'll go ahead and share a little bit about Karla. She is the founder and president of Empathy for Autism California Inc., a nonprofit dedicated to empowering families of neurodivergent children through education, advocacy, and community. A mother of two autistic children, one with moderate needs and one with profound needs, Karla blends over 9 years of hands-on experience navigating IEPs, therapies, and support systems with a professional background in family services and outreach. She is also the creator and host of the Voices Beyond the Spectrum podcast, author of One Diagnosis, Many Hearts, and The Heart of Service, and a passionate advocate for cultural humility and systemic change. Through storytelling, training, and collaboration, Karla is building a more inclusive world where families feel seen, supported, and empowered. So welcome, Karla.
Thank you very much, Brooke. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, you have such an extensive background, and just after meeting with you to chat about our talk today, I could just tell that you really have such a heart for helping the autism community and also really understand it, living and breathing it. And so I'm just grateful that you could share your story and share, all of your experience today. And I'd love to start off with having you share just a little bit about your journey growing up with a brother on the spectrum and how that shaped your understanding of autism and empathy. We're going to talk a lot about empathy today. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Definitely. And again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And then honestly, growing up with a brother on the spectrum really shaped my entire world from a very young age. We're 5 years apart. I'm the eldest. And it's just seeing my mother specifically try to navigate the systems at that time, especially in the 90s where autism wasn't, the awareness wasn't there and the therapies weren't there. It wasn't something that was as accessible as it is now. and we didn't have Google. And
Hmm.
on top of that, to add an additional layer, my mother and myself were immigrants. So I picked up the language quickly, but she took a little bit longer. So imagine being a 5, 6 year old, having to go to doctor's offices and sit there and interpret and translate documentation for her to the ability of a 7 year old. It was a lot. And that's why I'm so passionate also to talk about like the glass children aspect and how a lot of the times the siblings are in the shadows of those siblings with the diagnosis, and how it taught me that autism doesn't have is not in isolation. It actually does transform the whole family and the system. And yeah, that's a little bit of how I grew up.
Yeah, wow. I mean, what level of responsibility that you had and a gift because you're helping so many now, with that life experience you had. And I know you mentioned the glass children, and we're going to get to that. That's a term I hadn't heard before, and I'm excited to have you share a little bit more about what that means and what that represents. But, what a powerful upbringing that you had. And now I know you've also now have shared about your children on your social media accounts and in your platform and your books and all these great things we're going to talk about. And you have two very different children, Adrian and Sophia, boy and a girl, different levels. And I just love to have you share a little bit about your journey with them as a mom and a little bit about your story now on this side of things.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, Adrian and Sophia honestly are my greatest teachers. They've molded the human that I've become, and they empower me to be able to help others. And I'll get to that as well. Adrian has more significant support needs, especially in the area of communication. And that has been a journey for him and for us as a family. And then Sophia, even though she is level 1, she does have social and sensory needs that need to be met
Hmm.
as well. So parenting two children that require, and let me give you an example. For example, Sophia, for her to do her homework, everything has to be quiet. And then she has to have exercise breaks in between, let's say 10 math problems where she does 10 jumping jacks and then resets. And everything has to be like in its place. Well, with Adrian, he's completely the opposite. You have to have the TV, the cell phone, music going, spray like his fragrance of lavender everywhere, the blanket, and which would be so much of a distraction for me getting any test done.
Right.
But for him, that's how he thrives. And finding that balance in the same household, it's humbling, So they've really taught me that, and how that has transcended to me helping other families is I get to see both point of views of the families, and I can see it from a very unbiased manner because I've lived both with both of them. And I see the
Right.
struggles with both of them because both of them have struggles that, it's not a one size fits all. And it truly shines there.
Yeah, it makes me think of a post that you shared on, I think it was on Instagram, just about being compassionate and accepting of all diagnoses when it comes to autism, and how in our field, online at least, there's a lot of like critiques or just back and forth right now of different because of the different levels. And I just thought that was so powerful that you were able to share that from a mom's experience of having children, in two different places, and how important it is to have that empathy for all families, regardless of what level their child is at.
Exactly. Like, I feel like it breaks my heart when I see communities within our community of parents that have disabled children, not just autism, honestly, just on all areas, where they're sitting there so busy utilizing the little energy they have left, comparing their struggles with others. And I know we're human, we're bound to have a few comparisons here and there, out
Yeah.
of survival. But I feel if we use that same energy to embrace each other and embrace our children's strengths and their uniqueness, I feel like we would go a lot further as a community. And I mean, we're already fighting for services for our children with the outside world. We're already fighting the districts at times, or trying
Hmm.
to find more therapies that our kids could use, or find a new way where our kids are going to taste new foods. So we have so many
Yeah.
already outside battles. Why bring it in instead and make it even a more isolating journey as a community? I think it's all
Mhm.
about supporting each other and understanding it's not about judgment or comparison. It's about embracing and celebrating other people's successes just like if it was ours.
Yeah, it's so important. I love that message. And I think it's something we all need to talk about more as
Mhm.
we're going through this journey and supporting these families. And I'm just glad that you're sharing that on your platform. And you get to have your own life experience to say, hey, these are two unique experiences, they're just different, really.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
so I appreciate what you're doing for the community in that way. And I know you also discovered that you are level one autistic. And I think that would be so great to share just a little bit more about that and how that changed the way that you relate to your children and the families you support.
Yeah, definitely. It actually happened as an accident. I was going for an anxiety diagnosis. Came out with an autism diagnosis out of that appointment. And honestly, it was a sign of relief because growing up, I was always told you talk too fast. You're too much, you're overachiever. And as I went on to different careers, the same thing. Like I'm very competitive, not with anyone else but myself. And I hyper focus a lot. And I just thought, well, I always said I have issues. I'm a little quirky. What it is what it is. But
Yeah,
then I see my daughter and she's a carbon copy of me. So it's everything started to make sense. And my diagnosis and acknowledging it and embracing it honestly helps me show my daughter to not be ashamed, to not constantly feel like she has to mask herself so people like her, and to be
right.
okay with being herself. And it also helps me now give a different perspective to families that I do help. It gives me that not professional, not parent, but as an individual, and show them how I was able to maybe deal with certain sensitivity issues I have, or letting them know how masking feels for me and how I prefer now not to, even if I might make certain people uncomfortable. That's not
Yeah.
my problem, that's theirs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm in a place of acceptance at this point with that, and I now use that as a tool to help my families and my kids.
What a beautiful journey and model that you are for all
Thank
of those that you're helping. It's true. I mean, I think you're embracing who you are and the gifts that you have and being your true authentic self. A lot of people have a hard time with that in
you.
life, regardless of a diagnosis, and to have that awareness, that self-awareness and embrace it is a beautiful thing. And I think it's a great gift that you're giving a lot of people by doing that and sharing your message in that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean it's been a journey, but I feel I'm getting there, it's a work in progress, and I feel there's no better way to lead with your children than by example.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. What a gift. I love it. Well, I'm so excited to talk about empathy for Autism of California.
Yes.
And I know this is near and dear to your heart. And so let's start off with just talking about what drove you to create this nonprofit.
Honestly, it was born out of a mix of a little bit of frustration and hope. I saw too many families kind of falling through a lot of cracks and isolated and feeling overwhelmed, and kind of took me back to when I got my son's diagnosis and the feelings I had, and the feelings of guilt, the feelings of fear as to what's next. So with
Yeah.
that, I just felt that with what I knew and with what I wanted to bring in, I could make a difference in our community and provide things so they wouldn't feel how I felt and
Yeah.
take that burden off them.
Wow, that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more about then all the amazing things you're doing and what the core mission and focus is, and also the services that you're offering through Empathy for Autism of California.
Definitely. Our mission, honestly, is to just walk alongside our families and guide them and empower them and their to be able to better service their neurodivergent children. I feel that if us as parents educate ourselves, we can better advocate. And if we can better advocate, we can provide a better future for our children to teach them how to advocate for themselves when we're not in the picture anymore, or set plans in place so when we're not in the picture, they're not alone in the journey. So what we offer bilingual support groups. We offer a mom support group, a dad support group, and a Spanish support group. We also do community events designed to show inclusivity and be very sensory friendly, as well as trainings for families. And we also offer, obviously, the podcast, Voices Beyond the Spectrum. But we just try to see how to make a community out of the families that we support so they
Yeah.
don't feel alone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And now I know you're in Southern California. Is this for the whole state of California or is it mostly in Southern California?
To be honest with you, because the support groups are virtual, we do have one
Okay.
in person, and that one is in Southern California that we rotate between, let's say, Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego County, depending on where the parents are that are joining the group. But the virtual ones is anyone that needs support, that
Fantastic.
wants to know that there's a community there. Because a lot of the IEP regulations or a lot of resources we provide, they help everyone. We even have
Right.
moms, honestly, that have children with Down syndrome in the support group. So we try to just embrace the community at a whole and include everyone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we used to do support groups at TAG and I loved them. And it sounds like you have a thriving group of families because we always struggled with helping the family see the value in taking that time for themselves. It is so important for them to have that camaraderie and that just ability to commiserate and share and ask questions. And when we were doing them, it was mostly about RDI, families that were doing RDI programs, so they could talk about their activities they were doing and questions they had. And it was a great support system for them. But do you find that families are, able to put themselves first and consistently participate, or is that still a challenge? I'm just curious.
It's still a challenge, I'm not gonna lie. We, at one of the first meetings we've had, we always walk through a few basic slides where we say, how are you doing today? How are you? No one else. How are you doing today? Thank you for taking the time. This is some time for you. You're entitled to have that time for yourself. You're not being selfish. And we always, always push on that because I feel as a primary caregiver myself, we always have that sense of guilt that I can't go get my nails done because that's time I could use doing this, this, and this that I got to take care of. Or I can't drink my coffee in peace because, so a lot of the times we need that because if we don't recharge ourselves, then it falls back on the family. And if we're sick, a lot of the times everything that happens in the family stops because we're
Yeah.
running. So that we do really push on leading by example once again, and also by saying, hey, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to embrace what you're feeling. You don't always have to put on a smile and
Yeah.
act tough. And you can ask for help and learn how to accept the help, which is the hardest, I
Yes.
think, for us as well.
Oh my gosh, all of that's so powerful. I love that you're focusing on all of those things. I mean, you just hit so many important pieces for parents, especially moms, I think, that have the hardest time, but in my experience, but just to take the time for themselves, and even, if they feel like there's so many things to get done, I just cannot emphasize that enough. It's so important. And what a good resource, and that's so nice that it's virtual too. So if they don't have the time to drive there, at least they can just hop right on their computer and join virtually and have
Exactly.
that time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. Very good. Well, I know that your work focuses on treating the whole family with empathy. And you mentioned that earlier too, as a sibling, and how important it is to have that awareness on how it impacts the whole family. And I think that's so important and so true. And I'd love to have you share what that looks like, in your work and why I know why it's so important. But if you could share, just expand on that a little further, that would be great.
Definitely. I feel that recognizing how diagnosis impacts every member in the family and not just the child. Parents need the same emotional support and guidance that child needs. The siblings need validation and understanding. And then on top of that, the grandparents, the extended family, a lot of them need education because if they are not educated on the subject, it really isolates them from the others, from the primary family. And it creates animosity where animosity doesn't need to live. It could
Yeah.
be fixed through education. And I think treating the whole family with empathy means creating space for everyone and their experiences and their thoughts, and recognizing on the healing process that comes with that as well. So that's why for me it's very important to address not just the child with the diagnosis, but everyone around. And you mentioned, for example, moms. And I've also noticed that even fathers, or secondary caregivers are not kept in the loop, which creates that isolation. And then at that point, that marriage is living a parallel life, not a partnership anymore,
Yeah.
because they're all in their own little world trying to just survive. And it's getting the families out of survival into something more healthier and a healthy environment as a whole.
This show is brought to you by Therapeutic Approach to Growth. Therapeutic Approach to Growth helps families with relationship and behavioral needs. Their holistic programs are individualized to honor and respect each family and their autistic son or daughter's sense of self through programs such as relationship development intervention, naturalistic ABA, and animal-assisted services. If you're finding yourself frustrated or discouraged with your current behavioral programs and would like to see more long-term meaningful growth for you and your family, then contact TAG today at www.tagforgrowth, that's TAGFORGROWTH.com, to learn more about how to schedule a consultation or how they can offer you the help your family needs, whether in person, remotely, or in a school setting. Again, that's www.tagforgrowth.com. Wow. That's such a great lens that you have. Just each individual person in the family and the commonalities of the challenges for those different roles within family dynamics.
Yes.
And it is so true. And nobody does that except for you. I think that needs to be talked about more because it's so
Yeah.
true. We do that a lot in our programs, but not to the specificity that you just shared. And I think that's so important to really, even the grandparents, as you mentioned, that can be so hard for then the parents to also. I've seen some clients that, or the grandparents don't understand, or they're dismissive, or they think the child's just maybe being naughty, or they just don't understand. And so they come to these other conclusions that aren't accurate. And then that can be really isolating and frustrating and exhausting, really. So
Exactly.
that's so important.
I mean, you have to think about different things like the cultural aspects that come into place, or the generational gaps of how a certain generation was raised compared to our generation, and the different approaches in parenting. So I remember, to share a little story, I remember taking my son to a trip. He was 4, to Mexico. And my son was having an over sensory load because it was very loud in the household we were in. So he was having a meltdown because of it. He was overwhelmed. So my uncle had the audacity to turn around and say, he just needs more discipline. He needs the chancla. If you are not aware what that term chancla means, the sandal, like a spanking. And I just grabbed my son, smiled, because I know they're good people.
Right.
They don't know what they don't know. And that was my thing. After that, I put my son to sleep, and then I had to talk with him, and I had to explain what it was. So moving forward, if he ever approached another mom that was going through something with their child, he had more empathy and understanding and a different perspective on it, because we're not born with empathy. We have to build it and nourish it. And that's something where we as parents, we can step in and try not to take it personal, even though it can be very hard, and take
Yeah.
that to educate that person, because that can make a difference for another encounter with another child.
Right. And that's just a fantastic approach. And I like what you said, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And I like to always say, when you know better, you do better. And so helping them to know better so they can do better, and coming
Exactly.
with that mindset is so healing for everybody.
Definitely.
And empowering too. I would imagine that's much more empowering than taking a kind of a resentful approach or a frustrated approach. It's like, no, let me help him so that he can do better.
Exactly.
And I think that's so important. So I love it. And so, okay, let's talk about this term, the glass children. Because I know you mentioned that
Yes.
earlier, and I've seen you talk about it in your posts as well. And like I said, I hadn't heard this before, so I'd love for you to share what does this mean and what does it represent to you?
To me, class children are siblings of children with disabilities. So those whose needs go unmet or they feel invisible. So when you hear glass children, you immediately think they're breakable or they crack. No, it's because they get seen through. So an example is like having the therapist come into a household and they address the child's needs that have the diagnosis. But very little, they could come there for 4 or 5 years and never know the siblings' names and not know about the siblings. Or as moms, especially primary caregivers, sometimes we fall into the hyper focusing trap where we hyper focus on that one child that really needs us and not really taking into account the other children and how that's impacting them. And from personal experience, I know that I felt, I thought it was normal to feel invisible until I understood that it wasn't okay. That my story mattered as much as my brother's story, and that my needs were as important as his. And no, no fault to my mother. My mother was an amazing is an amazing mother till this day and an
Yeah.
amazing grandmother. And I applaud her for everything she did with the little resources she had. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that there wasn't no after effects of that situation that we were all dealt into with because of the diagnosis.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I take the other approach now because I'm a mother and Sophia has needs. But for example, with her, we do schedule 1 week in a month, whether it's one day. And if we can't, let's say, go somewhere, what we do is do a movie night just with her, my husband, and I, where we don't have to accommodate the environment and modify it to Adrian all the time.
Right.
Because we've had outings where we drive, let's say, an hour and a half to Seaport Village to sit there and walk the dogs and, look at the beach and eat. We order pizza and we eat it at the park.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get there and Adrian's overstimulated. So we drove an hour to just sit there 15 minutes before we have to pack up and go. So we have to
Right.
take into account Sophia's feelings and say, hey, she was really looking forward to this outing and now she's not going to have it. And not always being the mom that says, I'm busy right now. I'll talk to you later. Or, you know, it makes her feel like she's not priority as well. So we really try to do that metacognition and try to catch it within ourselves so we don't do it to her. So she doesn't feel like she has to compete or feel that guilt or that envy within her for that attention.
Yeah, oh, that's a beautiful thing to have that awareness. And if you were to speak to one of your families right now that, may have neurotypical kids and a child with autism, what do you recommend for them to keep that in mind so that they can also have that awareness?
Schedule at least 5 minutes. I know sometimes I'm blessed to have my mother's support and my husband's support. And I know in this community, unfortunately, that's not the commonality. So I am aware of that. But even let's say, as a single mom, taking 5 minutes to take that chat during dinner, 5 minutes of just focusing on that child without a diagnosis and asking them how their day went and genuinely listening. They know when we're listening and they know when we're just like, mm-hmm, uh-huh, sure,
Right.
honey. Sure, honey. Let's go to the next thing. So genuinely sitting there interested in what they have to say. And also
Yeah.
embracing and letting them know that they're the siblings. They're not a secondary caregiver, that they don't have to stress. Because I know a lot of the times they go into that. I remember my brother going to the park with him. I was shadowing him the whole time because I was so scared of people doing things to him that I
Yeah.
couldn't enjoy my outing as a child,
Right.
because I felt that I had to always protect him. So a
Hmm.
lot of kids go into that naturally. So as a parent, we have to say, oh, go play. I got him. Go play. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Go make friends. You don't have to feel guilty being a child. And I think reiterating that to them, eventually it will click.
Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. And sending that message, that
Yes.
mindfulness, that you're really being mindful in those moments, to
Yeah,
allow them to be a child, to be free from that responsibility.
exactly. I
Yeah.
know.
And I think it's so important. And we're so busy in our society that just to slow down and to have that awareness, I think, is so important.
It's work, definitely, and it doesn't come easy, but with time, it starts becoming a habit where then it becomes part of your life and then it just becomes a routine.
Yes, I love that. That's such a good point. And that's the goal. It's just little changes that lead to a big change. That's what I always say.
Exactly.
Start
Exactly.
small, it will happen. All of a sudden, you'll look back and be like, wow, we're in a different place.
Exactly.
Oh. And so, how can professionals develop a deeper sense of empathy and cultural humility when working with families?
I feel like professionals can do that just by a simple act of listening. So when professionals enter a household, entering it with not goals in mind, with but with curiosity, without assumptions. And ask the families about their values, their traditions, their priorities. Involve them in the process, not just be there and say you have to do this with authoritarian behavior and communication. You know, going there with humbleness, to build that trust. Because a lot of the times I feel parents are already so overwhelmed with everything that they have going on. The last
Yeah.
thing they need is someone telling them that they need to do more and that they're not doing enough because the
Yeah.
guilt's probably already overwhelming for that parent. So coming with that more cultural humbleness and humility really goes a long ways with families.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. And as a provider, sometimes, we don't even hear sometimes the guilt that the families are having or experiencing. They don't always share that. So I think that is a good point to understand that that is likely present and to have that awareness and I also love what you shared about just having the cultural awareness and having sensitivity around that because that does play into our decisions as parents and how we are going to do things and how we're going to see things, you know.
Yes.
And I love in our line of work, what we get to do is to be more of a collaborator. We like to come in and share more like we're a team member, not you are the expert of your child. Actually, you are definitely the expert. You know your child the best. And we're here just to be an active team member to help you along the way, but we are not going to come in and tell you how to do everything because you are the expert.
And as a parent, that's a beautiful thing to hear because then you're like, okay, I'm part of this. Now I'm engaging. Now I'm actually going to put an effort forward because they're not here to just kind of like throw credentials in your face of what you don't know,
Right.
and jargon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
huge.
it's so true. Yeah, it's so true. And I think one of the things I like to talk about a lot is just trusting that parental instinct, understanding that we all have it. It's a gift that we've been given and we should keep it alive and keep it strong, especially when you're having to make so many decisions for a child that may have more decisions that need to be made.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
just to listen to that instinct and trust it.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's talk about your books. So you have written two books,
Yeah.
and one is for parents, and that one is One Diagnosis, Many Hearts, and one is for professionals, which is The Heart of Service. And I want to have a chance to just chat about kind of what drove you to write the books and what they're all about.
Honestly, both books grew out of real conversations I've had with families and also with professionals. One Diagnosis, Many Hearts is a book I wish I would have had as starting my journey with my family. It would have prevented me from making a lot of minor mistakes that later could have become bigger. Also, just understanding the ripple effects that the diagnosis has on the family, especially as primary caregivers. I remember in the beginning of my journey with my son, I was so hyper focused on him, and I wasn't spending time with my husband or bringing him in to what was going on with Adrian specifically.
Yeah.
And it really put a strain in our marriage at that time. And it made us almost be like we lost our partnership basically for a while, and it was not a happy environment to live in, and the kids absorb our energy. So I think having that awareness is huge, as well as even with our family members outside extended family. you know we stopped seeing some family members because we didn't know how to go about it with the diagnosis with Adrian. So explaining how the different processes go, and even not necessarily just the primary caregiver reading this book, but maybe that extended family, so they understand what happens inside the household. So they understand what pressures that primary caregiver is going through along with that child with the diagnosis, to see if maybe they can come in and say, hey, do you want to take Sibling out to eat ice cream while I stay home with the child with the diagnosis, and gives them that both that respite time and that enjoyment time, so they don't lose that relationship as, let's say, a mother-daughter or a mother-son relationship. So that was what really fueled me to write those books. And then working before it with other nonprofits, just seeing how there was not any Spanish resources. I also did it in Spanish for this Hispanic community, so they could also have something to read. And you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah.
this kind of shines lights on different possible topics that you could work on as a family, and different tools that I personally use with my family, that helped me get through certain moments in our life and our journey with the diagnosis. And
Beautiful.
yeah, and then as far as the heart of service, that's for more the professional, and challenge them to take an approach to their work so they can help heal the families together, and go in with empathy, with equity, and with cultural humility into those households to build trust and a relationship, not just collect data, or not just go there with their own biases
Yeah.
to make the families feel emotions that they shouldn't be feeling when they should be getting help.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's so important. And I just think that's so great that you are seeing that need and creating a resource for those needs. So, I love that. And now you're also a podcaster. You're very
Yeah.
busy.
Um,
So let's talk about the podcast. What is the podcast all about?
I invite families to share their stories. And honestly, every story has been pretty powerful in its own way. I've heard parents talk about, let's say, overcoming shame of the diagnosis and about their feelings with that diagnosis, or building a more inclusive community and how that has turned out, or just the frustrations of advocacy in itself, and how they had to jump through so many hurdles to get certain things for their children. But what they all, I guess, share, and I've seen that core, is the level of resiliency that our families have, and the level of love that they have for those individuals. So I just wanted to provide a platform that truly shine light on the people that barely get that platform, which are the caregivers of our children. And I also invite the neurodivergent community, the adults, to share also their journey and their perspective, or the siblings to share their journey and with the diagnosis and just caring for someone with a disability. And I think it's a platform that is definitely needed, because you hear a lot of the platforms given to people that are doctors, that are specialists, but very little do you hear it from the actual people that are in it 24/7. So I think it's a way of them letting it out and healing also.
So true. And I think, other people being able to hear those stories and think I'm not alone. Oh, I can relate to that. I mean, that is so healing as well.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
so important as we're navigating these challenges, and celebrating our kids as well. And you can celebrate together and you can commiserate together. And it sounds like almost like an extension of your support group in a way.
And it truly is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think just providing more resources for families that, when you hear it from different places, different people, it really goes a long way. And I think it's so great. And now I know when we met, you talked a little bit about how you have an upcoming speaking event too, in San Bernardino. So what are you going to be sharing at that conference?
It's going to be at the 39th Annual Children's Conference in San Bernardino. My focus is talking about the ripple effects of the diagnosis and how it transforms family systems and why professionals must approach families with a different perspective, with a more empathy and humility based, and also blending a little bit of my personal stories of what I've been through and research to kind of build that stronger partnership as a whole and to create better outcomes in general. And so they can service the families, to their full potential.
Yeah, that's great. And is that going to be live? I mean, excuse me, is that going to be live streamed?
No, it's not going to be live. I don't
Okay.
think it is. I haven't honestly asked. I know
Okay.
I'm presenting at one. That's all I know.
Okay. All
So,
right.
so yeah, but I will be recording some parts of it and posting it on my social media and hopefully sharing some parts of it. And then I might do a self podcast where I talk about it
Yeah.
for the families to kind of get a little bit of a perspective as well as for professionals. So
Yeah.
we're in the
Oh, you
works
should
of
do it. That's great.
that.
Good. Well, I will make sure to include that information about that in the show notes as well. So we'll make sure to include all the great information on how people can find you too.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's fantastic. And so if you could give one piece of advice to parents and one to professionals working in the field of autism, what would it be?
As a parent, honestly, the most commonly phrase said is you're not alone. And to make sure you, as a parent, educate yourself to the best of your abilities to be able to become that advocate for your child. Because how you advocate for your child, that usually shows a pathway of what their future is going to look like. So that is very important as parents to have that and to find that community that pushes you and supports you through the process as well. So you don't have an isolating journey. So that's
Yeah.
what I would say for our families. And then for professionals, always remember that entering a home is the sacred place of the family. So lead with humility, listen deeply, never underestimate the power of empathy, and that humility opens more doors than any credentials with our families.
That's so great. I love it. I'm going to keep that one. It's so true. It's so true. I mean, it's beautiful. You have to build that trusting relationships with the families you serve, and
You do.
it's so true. That's gonna open up so many more opportunities to guide and to connect and to support. And it's a beautiful thing you're doing, Karla. I'm so grateful that you were able to share all of this information. And now I want to make sure you have a chance to share where people can find you, whether it's the podcast, the books, the presentation, your website, all the things.
Perfect, perfect. You guys can visit us at our website. It's www.empathyforautismcalifornia.com. You can also find our support groups, workshops, podcast episodes, and free resources there. You could also follow us on social media at Empathy for Autism California, and you can stay updated with events, which we have a really cool one coming up in Temecula. It's going to be at the winery. We're going to host the Sensitive Santa December 7th at the Shapen Winery. So it's going to be really nice for our families, completely free. And we're going to offer
Oh,
some resources there as well. So whether you are a parent, professional, or just an ally, this is the place to join our community.
yeah, that's so great. I love it. And I'm so glad you shared that event because we didn't talk about some of your other events that you've had. And I don't know if you want to just share just a quick overview of what those events look like to our listeners to better understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have, like I mentioned, a lot of the Brave Bunch events, and then we do a lot of outreach. We were just at the Fall Advocacy and Inclusion Fair at Inland Regional Center, hosted by Inclusivity Bridges of Foundation, and they were amazing. And they put up a great event. It was everything was amazing there, and we got to collaborate with other organizations to hopefully make this the event in December really shine and bring families in to take pictures with Santa with you know, accommodations of the environment for them so they feel comfortable.
Wonderful. Oh, that's so great. Well, I want to get information about that event and share that with our clients as well. So
Perfect, perfect. Will
that
do.
would be so great. I love what you're
Thank
doing.
thank you.
Oh,
Thank
good. Well, thank you so much, Karla, for being here. And
you,
it's just
Brooke.
was
It was
wonderful to hear your story and to all the resources. You're doing amazing work, and I just am grateful for what you're doing for the autism community.
you too. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me here and providing what you provide for our families as well. We truly are thankful
Absolutely.
for that. I
Of course. Wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. And I will have all of your information in our show notes. So for those that are listening and want to learn more and join one of those support groups, I highly recommend it and check it out. And I just hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Karla.
Thank you. Have a great one.
I'm dancing on the edge again. The wind is calling my name. I'm dancing on the edge again. This time I'm not looking back there. You can change me, you can tell me down. I'll be echoes in every place I fly. I break the rules with rebels mind. I'm a hurricane and free, rolling wide.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only. The content shared is based on the experiences, opinions, and perspectives of the hosts and their guests and should not be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. The discussions and topics covered are intended to foster understanding and awareness of autism therapies, but are not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Before making any decisions regarding therapies or treatments, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare provider who can provide personalized recommendations based on your unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts, guests, and producers are not responsible for any consequences, damages, or outcomes arising from the use or application of any information during the show.